So, hi everyone, I'm Don Saucier. I'm the Faculty Associate Director of our Teaching and Learning Center, and you have found your way to our professional development series. So, whether you're in person or you're watching asynchronously later, thank you so much for being here because we got a great event for you today. I want to remind you that we have a professional development series on Wednesdays at noon over Zoom all throughout the academic year. So, this is our penultimate event, which is a fancy word for next to last that I learned recently. So, this is our penultimate event of the fall semester. We'll then take a hiatus for winter break and then we'll start again in the spring semester. So keep your eyes open for that. We will be advertising over our TLC Hub, which is a Teams channel that we have. And if you attend our event, we'll add you to that Teams channel. If you didn't attend our event, let us know and we'll add you to that Teams channel. We also advertise over Facebook and also in the letter that goes out from the provost office on Fridays occasionally. So look for our events there. And Jeff has dropped some of that information. If you come to enough of our events, do some reflections and things, post-event surveys, we'll give you a TLC Professional Development Certificate. And we'd love you to take advantage of that. We have those for graduate students. We also have those for faculty and staff. If you're a faculty member, you could potentially become a TLC Fellow as well, which means you get to present in our series next year. And the thing that makes you a fellow is basically you're not only interested in improving your own teaching excellence, but you're interested in helping others improve theirs as well. So if you have any questions about that, please let us know. Information is available here on our webpage, and my colleagues just dropped that into the chat as well. Next week, like I said, we'll have our last event of the semester. It will be a teaching chat. And teaching chats are kind of like TLC office hours. So we can come and we can crowdsource, we can discuss concerns, we can discuss questions. I'll also have some questions that I'd like to ask the group that are always kind of on my mind. And one of the questions I'll be talking about next week is, what have you learned this semester? I think teaching and learning is a dynamic process. And even if you've taught a class a multitude of times, what you can learn from your students in that cohort that semester, not only about the content, but also about the process of teaching it, I think is so informative. So I'll be looking to share some stories next week and hear yours as well. Without further ado, though, we have a wonderful presentation today. We have Andy Kaler, who has won every teaching award that she can here at K-State. She's presented at our Soto Showcase, which we'll talk about in the spring semester. And she's going to be talking about making learning memorable through humor. We thought we kind of needed this jolt of positivity at the end, and Andy is that jolt. So, Andy, I'm so glad that you're here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Don. Let me share my screen here. I'm sending a request right now to Jeff. Okay. Just 1 second. Let me hide the controls here so I can. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Not just yet.
Huh.
It says you've started screen sharing.
Huh. Let me wait a little bit because here it's showing up for me. Let me try again. Stop share. I hate when Zoom does that.
I was telling my students in class yesterday, if you can share your presentation over Zoom, 90% of the hard part of the teaching is done.
Yes.
There we go.
There we go.
Is it full screen now?
Yes,
Great. Let me hide the
we're seeing Will Smith right now.
Yes, perfect.
All right.
All right. So, first of all, I'm Andy Kaler. Thank you so much for having me. I am a graduate teaching and research assistant in agronomy at K-State, and I'm very excited to be here today talking about humor. How can you make your classes funnier, more accessible, and more enjoyable for your students as well? So, on the side, you can see what is the agenda for today. So, I'm just going to give you a quick introduction about me. Why am I here today, and what is my teaching background? I'm going to talk a little bit about the relevance of humor in teaching. What are the benefits of humor? What do I do to create the meme of the day? And how you can get started with humor in your classroom as well. And I'm going to close with a practical guide on how you can make your own memes to bring that creativity to your classes as well, and some tips for success. So just to give you some context, I've been teaching for quite a while. But I've been doing both a GRA and a GTA appointment, which means that I do lots of research, but also lots of teaching as well. I started teaching 13 years ago as an English tutor, all the way back in Brazil, where I am from. I used to work on an English course in the city, the college city that I went to go to, that I used to go to. But then I created my own English program called Enjoy, which is a pun with my name, Andy, and the word enjoy, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted students to enjoy learning English, and I wanted to offer that opportunity in a more accessible way. So I've been doing that for quite some time now. Since I got at K-State in 2021, I have had over 774 students across multiple courses. So I've been teaching soil microbiology lecture and lab, soils lecture and lab, world food crops, biology of the fungi, and human dynamics in the food and agricultural sciences. But what I'm going to be focusing today is on how I brought the idea of using the meme of the day to increase student engagement in soil microbiology lectures and how you can do that in your course as well. Just to give you some context, humor can be defined as the communication in which the stimulus produces amusement. We all like humor, and humor has been used by instructors for a very long time. So if you look on Google Scholar, you can see papers dating all the way back to the 70s and even before that. And it is very well documented how the benefits of humor for teaching. So I'm going to bring you two types of humor today. The first one is content-related humor, which directly refers to the materials that we are presenting in class, and also content unrelated humor. So that can be divided into daily life jokes, self-disparaging humor, or aggressive humor, which I strongly advise you against. So don't use that. We're going to talk about that later, but I strongly advise you to keep away from that. The focus for today's presentation is going to be on preparing a content-related humor, but I just wanted to give you some context on the other forms of humor as well. And you might ask me, why should I care about humor? Why would that be relevant for me? Well, research has been reporting that when you use a context-related humor to your classes, you can attract and sustain the attention of students. You can create a more relaxed and productive learning environment as well. It is also reported to reduce anxiety, enhance student participation, and increase motivation to your classes. And one of the most interesting studies that I read about humor showed that the content-related humor specifically improved the retention of the material that was taught in the class for up to 6 weeks after the material was presented, which is pretty awesome. And also, humor correlates positively with higher student evaluations. So some of the benefits of humor that have been reported in the literature is, of course, maybe making classes more enjoyable. So students look forward to come to your classes when your classes are funnier, when they see that you pull in that effort to create that engaging environment. It has also been reported to support neurodivergent students because it presents materials in different ways and also creates that emotional connection with the material that is getting presented. Humor can also reduce boredom in the classroom, promote creativity, and be a thought-provoking activity that you can do with your students, which then translates into a less stressful learning atmosphere, increasing the sense of belonging. And when students feel like they belong, they're much more likely to engage and to interact with each other and with the instructor as well. It has always been reported that it increases learning speeds, it builds trust between students and instructor, and improves that relationship between the student and the teacher while also improving teaching evaluations. So it has been reported, it's very well documented that humor is an effective tool in education, but it's also very underused. So my goal for today is showing you a strategy that I have been using and how you could also do that if you're interested on. So what I've been doing is using the meme of the day in soil microbiology for the past 3 years. So a meme is pretty much an amusing or interesting item. So it can be a picture, a caption picture, or a video, or a genre of items that is spread widely online, especially through social media. And we know how important social media is today Everyone has it, everyone has contact with that. So my goal was to bring that daily relatable experience into my classroom so students could start the classes in a lighthearted mood. The good thing about memes is that they always capture the attention instantly, and they're highly relatable and culturally relevant. So some examples of memes. I'm a soils person, so all of my memes are going to be soils related. So excuse me for that. I love this one when you're at a party and no one wants to talk about soil health. Very relatable to me. When I'm teaching about molecular techniques, this is a classic one too. DNA, RNA from Game of Thrones. So the meme of the day is going to recap some of the complex and challenging concepts in a very friendly and accessible way during my classes. And several of my students from the past 3 years have reported that the memes actually help them remember those difficult topics. Some of them even use this to prepare for exams. And they report that it makes the classes much more enjoyable than they would before. So I want to bring two memes. Maybe let me hide them first and let me tell you a little background story first. So one of the classes that I teach during the fall semester is about nitrogen fixation. So we know that 78% of the air that we breathe is composed by nitrogen, but plants cannot use that nitrogen unless there is a bacteria in the soil that can actually fix the nitrogen that is in the air to a form that plants can use. But the caveat here is that the bacteria needs oxygen to survive. But the enzyme called nitrogenase, the enzyme that fixes nitrogen, it's extremely allergic to oxygen. Oxygen is extremely toxic for that enzyme. So they require a special protein called leg hemoglobin to bind oxygen and only deliver it to the bacteria, but not to the enzyme. So I love this meme from The Office. So rhizobia respiring oxygen, they need it. Nitrogenase, the enzyme cannot stand oxygen. And this is another one. So leg hemoglobin, the protein that traps oxygen and delivers it straight to the bacteria. So full disclosure, not all of my memes are going to be funny, but students always give me at least the PD laugh just for the effort. And I'm going to bring you several examples today. So usually what I do is I search for trending memes. So I'm very active on social media. So every time I see a trending meme, I save that to my meme folder so I can maybe use that later for something. And sometimes I even get scenes from popular shows like The Office, Friends, Modern Family, Grey's Anatomy. So when I'm watching TV and I see a scene that has a potential for becoming a meme, I just screenshot that and I save on my folder for potential memes for the future. And every single class it starts with a new meme. So it brings consistency and predictability to my classes as well. Research has also reported that students appreciate the consistency. So they know that every day when they enter my class, they are going to expect a brand new meme. And that creates that warm and inclusive environment as well. Here's another example. So this one is about phototrophs. So microbes that use light as a source of energy are called phototrophs. So this picture just is a great way of showing this. This one is from The Office as well. They're very content specific, so I always need to give you some background information. But when I'm showing them in class, I don't need to read the memes. I just project it on the screen as the students are walking in, and they're always laughing about it. So I teach a lot about soil microbes, soil fungi, bacteria, and lignin is one of the compounds in soils that are really difficult to be broken down. And only one specialized group of fungi called the white rot fungi can fully decompose lignin. Some other microbial groups, like bacteria, they can only decompose a little bit of lignin, while brown rot fungi can partially decompose. And students often mistaken brown rot and white rot fungi. So I always try to bring memes to remind them of that. So brown rot fungi trying to fully decompose lignin, well, today was a fantastic waste of time because they don't have the peroxidases, the enzymes that I specialize for breaking down lignin. Memes can also serve as a fun reminder for upcoming deadlines. So in my course, they always have a technical review that the first draft is due mid-semester, and then a final draft is due at the end of the semester. And they have a weekly question that they need to submit every Friday, where they address any points that were not very clear in the lecture or that they wanted to learn more about it. And then the next class, I start by looking at those questions. So I use the memes at the end of the class to remind them of deadlines too. So technical review due at midnight, weekly question due at noon. Don't forget to submit your weekly question. They forget sometimes. And this one was funny too. It was a Friday. They were forgetting to do their technical review, and they were forgetting even more to send their weekly question that were also due at noon. I do a lot of bacteria and fungi studies and classes on my soil microbiology course. One of the common mistakes for students is to forget the differences between gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. So the way that they react to the gram stain is different based on the thickness and the composition of the cell wall. So gram-positive bacteria are going to have that purple color because they have that thick layer of peptidoglycan. So I use this picture from Rachel Green of Friends to show gram-positive bacteria and another picture of her to show gram-negative bacteria. And this is a +1 showing how many layers gram-positive bacteria usually have. And just as a reminder, I usually show this after the content is presented. So I always start my classes with the memes, and they're referring to the classes that I taught before. So when they see the meme, they already know the content, and that brings that refreshment to them, like, oh yeah, that's how positive gram-positive bacteria looks like. And that helps them to retain the information as well. So one of the classic graphs that we use in my class, and Dr. Rice has been teaching this course for 35 years, and we always bring back this important diagram, is to show how different microbial groups will behave with water being added to the soil. So imagine that soils are porous media. Your pore can be either filled with air, oxygen that microbes can use, or filled with water that microbes can also use. But in this diagram, we see that the more water you have, aeration becomes a limiting factor, and the other way around, where water is the limiting factor. So there is a group of microbes called denitrifiers that only start to act after 60% of the pores of the soils are filled with water. So I brought this meme, 50% water-filled pore space. They're still waiting because they only start acting after 60. So it's just a funny way to remind them about this diagram. We also talk about bacteria quite a bit during the semester. So the bacteriophages, or just phages, they are viruses that are going to attach to the top of bacteria and then deposit their genetic material into the bacteria, which then multiplies, and there are more viruses getting released into the environment. And I saw this picture and I was like, this is a perfect example of how a phage attaches to a bacteria. So it's just as simple as that. And you can just, your students are going to laugh and they're going to remember concepts from the previous class. We do talk a lot about soil health as well. There is what we call the holy trinity of soil health, which is microbial activity, soil structure, and soil organic carbon. And we're always asking students to remember that and to talk about that on exams. So I try to find different ways of representing this holy trinity. So when I saw the Spider-Man meme, I was like, this is perfect. So soil health, microbial activity, soil structure, soil organic carbon. This is a classic meme too that you can use for so many things. Farmers are usually seeking short-term yield gains, tillage, over-fertilization, when they should actually be paying attention to soil conservation practices. And during my fungi class, we talk about Saccharomyces. So they reproduce by budding. So they pretty much produce an identical bud, like a piece of their bodies that is going to divide and turn into an identical individual. And a perfect example for that is the Legally Blonde actress, which looks exactly like her daughter. So Reese is a good example for illustrating reproduction by budding. We talk a lot about soils in this course, and one of the concepts that we examine is cation exchange capacity. So the more negative charges that your soils have, the more likely the positive charged cations or nutrients are going to attach to that soil. I created a meme for that using a Friends scene. So soils with a high CEC, they will have more negative charges, which will attract more of those cations. So I added a cation to each one of the friends in here. We also talk about cation bridges. So organic matter and clay particles, they usually are charged. They do have positive charges too, but most of them are negative. So they require cation bridges to get connected. So I did a similar one with friends as well, where Ross is soil organic matter. The pillow in the middle is calcium and iron, acting as a cation bridge, and Chandler is the clay. So it keeps you creative too, because every time you see something on TV, you just start screenshotting and finding potential uses for that. Back to that diagram, I use that for several memes. When we talk about microbes that require oxygen for survival or aerobic microbes, we can see that the more water-filled pore spaces that you have, so the more water that you have in your soils, the less microbial activity you're going to have within those groups. So I found this meme from Cam, and I think that would be perfect. Aerobic bacteria freaking out as soil oxygen dropped. The Office is one of my favorites, so I think I have probably over 100 pictures saved on my folder just from The Office. There is a group of fungi that I specialize on, that I work on for my research. It's called AMF, or arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. What this fungi does is provides nutrient for the plants. They expand the root system of the plants up to 300 times, improving soil structure, improving plant resilience to pathogens and drought. They do pretty much everything that we would dream of as a plant. So this one was perfect. Am I a hero? I really can't say, but yes. We also talk about soil texture. So sand particles usually tend to be much bigger than silt-sized particles, and then followed by clay-sized particles. So I saw this picture from Modern Family where Jay is much taller than Manny, which is much taller than Joe. So sand, silt, and clay. We talk a lot about greenhouse gases and global warming potential too. And it's important for this course that students remember the lifetime of some compounds, especially nitrous oxide. So I wanted them to remember that the lifetime of nitrous oxide is 114 years. So I use my Titanic lady meme, and to all be like, it's been 114 years. If you've watched Titanic, you'll probably remember I think she says 84 years, but it's pretty relatable. We do talk a lot about soil carbon sequestration as well in this course. So in the process of photosynthesis, plants are using the CO2 from the air to build their own bodies and release oxygen. And when those plants die, microbes start decomposing plant material in the soil. And as they decompose the plant material, they release that CO2 that was just fixed by the plant not so long ago back again into the air. And we know that CO2 is a greenhouse gas. So the plant fixed CO2 after microbial respiration. I'm back. I mentioned earlier today that lignin is one of the most complex residues that we have in the soil. So they are full of aromatic structures, so microbes have a hard time breaking it down. And mostly the white rot fungi is the only one that is capable of fully degrading lignin. Some other fungi, like brown rot fungi, can partially do it. Bacteria, not so much. So this one is a classic. Lignin enters the soil, and soil bacteria gets really confused because they simply don't have the enzyme apparatus for breaking down those important and complex um, aromatic rings. Another diagram, classic diagram that we use in class, is the percentage remaining of a residue when you add that to the soil and how long it takes days-wise for that material to be fully decomposed by microbes. So we have several different types of residue or components in here. And we see that lignin, for example, remains in the soil for a pretty long time as compared to cellulose or hemicellulose. This one is a classic. So soil decomposers, lignin, not very happy. Hemicellulose, pretty happy because that's easy for them to break down. Wheat straw has a very high CN ratio, so decomposers are pretty overwhelmed when they enter the soil too. So how do you get started with classroom humor? So I just gave you some examples of what I've been using, what has been working for me. But it doesn't have to be agronomy. Like all the examples that I shared today are from soil microbiology, which is the area that I work with, but you can literally use this for any area that you work on. So I just wanted to walk you through on how you can get started with classroom humor. And my first tip is finding your style. So make sure that you use the kind of humor that feels natural to you. So whether it's going to come in the form of jokes or memes or cartoons, funny images that are related to your content. Here's a picture of a cartoon, and I got inspired to starting bringing humor to class by the cartoons that Dr. Rice used to bring to classes as well. And I wanted to do that in a different way. I wanted to do that more content related and going to memes because I know that the newer generations they like memes more, but absolutely love cartoons. There are several cartoons from microbiology. This one is a classic. Excuse me, sir, would you mind getting the door for us, microbiologists, which is pretty fun. And heavily on the meme side. So here we have cover crops, wind erosion, farmers trying to keep their soils. This is a pretty funny one too. I did not make this. I got this from one of my sources of inspiration websites. So, if you don't feel comfortable telling jokes or talking about humor in class, you don't have to say anything. You can actually just display something on the screen, memes, cartoons, or anything funny as your students walk in. So, you don't even need to take time out of your lectures if you want to introduce humor into your classroom. As they walk in, they're going to see that, they're going to acknowledge that. Sometimes they will come to you and say, "Oh, this is a really good one." Sometimes they will give you some pity laughs, but it's always fun. The room will feel warm and relaxed before the class even starts. You can also use small and fun touches. I do lots of earrings. So I have content-specific earrings. I do the ones on the picture, I have the exact same ones when I teach about soil fungi. I have DNA rings, corn earrings. You can do that with socks as well, or even bringing mugs. It's a pretty chill way of just showing that you're a fun person too. Now, timing is everything. So, we talked about the benefits of humor, but it's important for us to know when humor should be used and when it should not be used. So, it's important that you use humor as a tool for learning, but never as a distraction. Okay. So, you don't want your course to be viewed as a circus, and you don't want to be seen as the professor that is going to teach a trivial course or that you're going to give better grades for everyone just because you're funny. So, it's important to keep that line. And in fact, some studies have reported that too much humor can also have a negative effect on student learning because you might be generating some unnecessary distractions. There is time for humor and there is time to be serious. So, one of my pieces of advice for you is to avoid humor in the middle of complex explanations. Okay. So, I usually try to have mine either in the beginning of the class or in the end of the class. I don't like introducing memes right in the middle of explanations because you can create some unwanted distractions that are going to hurt more than help. And also, it's important to give your students a moment to react and to reset their attention after they see your meme or your cartoon. It's not a minute, it's just like a few seconds. Every time I show the meme, if it's they're already sit down, if I'm already starting the class, they'll probably laugh. I give them 2 or 3 seconds, and then I start my class again. So what I usually suggest is using that in the beginning of your class where you can refer to previous class material or use that as an icebreaker as well, or in the end of the class as you wrap up your class content. I really like hidden gems. There is a professor at K-State which I admire a lot. He's one of the best people I've ever met. His name is Dr. Ari Jamponen. He teaches the biology of the fungi course, and he's such a fun person to be around. And when you read his syllabus and sometimes assignments and emails, there are always some hidden gems in there. So pieces of humor. He plays with words. He's brilliant. So I think it's a great way to engage with your students by adding those hidden gems into your announcements, emails, or assignments. But do that with care. Also, it's important for you to know your audience and to know how to read the room. So think about your students' ages, backgrounds, and academic levels. So as I showed you, my memes, they tend to be very content specific. So I'm not going to use the memes that I use for my 600 level class, which is half of graduate students and half of undergrads, when I teach Agron 305, which is mostly freshman or sophomore. So I know that their academic levels are different, so the memes are going to be different as well. And it's important for you to use that humor that is going to connect with what matters to the students, okay? The content that you're bringing to class and what is familiar and relatable to them so they can feel included in your classes. And I always advise to scan the room. So search for smiles, facial expressions, or silent. And then you can adjust your efforts to keep your students engaged and comfortable with your approaches. Okay. So remember, the goal here is to bring students in, never to single anyone out. And that brings us to the next topic that I want to address today. So, navigating humor without harm. I strongly advise you to stay away from humor that is tied to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or appearance. Okay, also avoid sarcasm, ridicule, or jokes that can target specific individuals. I know it used to be pretty common early on when I was in high school. Teachers used to do that all the time. They would pick on one student. This is not cool, not at all. So don't pick on a specific individual and target your jokes towards them, even if that person works with you, if they know you very well. It's never a good idea because you don't know how that message is going to come across to the other students in the class. So I strongly advise on not targeting people in your classroom to use your humor on. Also, do not use humor that could reinforce stereotypes or negative assumptions about groups or identities. Okay, this is extremely important. Try to search for things that are only positive, things that you're not going to marginalize any of the groups. Okay. And actually, research has reported that inappropriate humor or humor that it was not relevant to the class material actually had a negative impact on student learning. So my advice is to use positive content-related humor, so the one that fits your personal style, that is going to actually contribute to the class instead of just creating an unnecessary source of distraction. And as I usually say, use that humor that is going to build respect. That is going to create that great environment where students are going to engage with each other and with the instructor. And try to avoid double meanings that can be taken by insults as well. And if you see that one of your jokes or your memes or cartoons were not very well received or made anyone uncomfortable, discontinue using this, okay? And be willing to apologize and adjust your style if by accident you caused any discomfort or offended someone in your classroom. This is really important. So I'm probably speaking pretty fast, but I'm keeping an eye on time here because I want to have some time in the end for us to talk about it and to see how you could actually use that in your class. But now we're entering what I call a practical guide. So how can you start producing your memes for your class today? So my first tip is to search for sources of inspiration. So there are two pages that I use very often to look at their memes, and they inspire me to be creative and create my own memes as well. So the first one is called Science Memes. It's a Facebook page. I don't know if young people are using Facebook today. I still use Facebook. I like it. It's a very good page. And the second one is called Trust Me, I'm a Biologist. But I'm sure you can type on Instagram, on Facebook, something related to the area that you work with, and several memes are going to pop up. I do find a lot of memes on Pinterest as well. Sometimes I just type science memes, and several science memes are going to show up. This one is pretty funny too. I've done my research. I'd love to read it where it's published. And then that awkward silence. We've all been through that. My second tip is to build your meme library on Pinterest. So if you don't have a Pinterest account, create one. It's going to be really helpful for you. So what I do is when I have some free time or I'm watching TV or something, I just go to Pinterest and I type meme You can just type meme. You don't have to type anything specific like psychology meme or soil science meme, just meme. And several pictures are going to pop up. And then you can start saving them. Even if you don't have anything to use them right now, as you start building your meme library, you're going to remember the pictures that you have. And as you're preparing the content for your next classes, you can refer back to the pictures that you have already saved. I do this all the time. I have hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and sometimes I'm preparing a class, I'm like, oh, I know what would fit here. Then I go back and I find my picture in there. So after you have your meme library, you're going to start linking the content-specific situations with the memes that you have in your library. So usually, when you choose your topic, I try to choose topics that I know that students often forget, or things that they can mix up, like the gram-positive, gram-negative bacteria example. They tend to forget which color each one of them is going to turn and which one has the thick peptidoglycan cell wall. So I like choosing those topics specifically. So when students see that picture, it's going to create a specific memory for them. And when they are trying to do their exams or trying to recall that specific content, they will remember what you presented in class, but also the meme or the cartoon that you brought as well. So my criteria for choosing the topic is focusing on things that I know that students struggle to remember, but you can do that with anything at all. The second step is to connect that to a trending meme or a familiar meme format from your library. So with time, it gets easier with time, I promise, but you're going to start remembering, like, oh, I have a picture from Cam from Modern Family that might be useful for explaining aerobic bacteria. So you go back to your library and that picture is saved in there, and you can just add that little text. And make sure that you keep the wording short. You don't want to give them a book to read. The memes, they have to be pretty quickly understood. So you don't want them to be reading a paragraph to understand your meme. Here, I was giving you a context and explaining, but in class, I never do that. I just pop them open on the screen. They see, they laugh, and then we move on. Here's a classic one too that I made. Soil fungi be like, tillage, no-till. So we study a lot of fungal networks in this course, and we know that fungi creates a hyphal networks under the ground, which pretty much functions like a spider web. Imagine that giant spider web. And when you till your soil, you're breaking those hyphal networks. And fungi are not very happy about that. So I always reinforce when we're talking about different types of management, like no-till, where you leave your soil undisturbed, the fungal hyphae is going to thrive. So I like using dog pictures. And this is a classic one. Have you answered my T-val? Because sometimes they forget, so you gotta give them some reminders at the end of the lecture. Just some quick tips for success as we wrap up. Um, don't be discouraged if nobody laughs. It's pretty common, especially in the beginning. So we start to build a thick skin. I promise you, even if they don't laugh, students appreciate you putting in the effort of creating that light and warm environment in your classroom. So even if you're not landing the joke in the way that you want it to land, if you see that people are not uncomfortable, it was just like not a very funny joke, they're probably still gonna laugh or like at least give you a nod, like, yeah, thank you for trying. What I call PD laughs. They always give me at least the PD laughs, which already make me happy. Also, save potential memes every time you come across them. So every time I'm watching TV, if I see a TV show or a scene that can potentially become a meme, I will save that right away because otherwise you forget. So I have tons of pictures saved on Pinterest. Sometimes you might come across them on Instagram or Facebook. Sometimes they are already a meme, but you can search for that picture without the text and you can recreate that meme in your own way, which is pretty easy and fun to do as well. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback. So I really like asking for feedback throughout the semester. Don't wait until the end when students are leaving. Ask throughout the semester, like, how are you enjoying this? Do you think it's a good thing? Should I improve? What would you do to make your experience better in this class? Because that is our goal. And I promise it gets much easier with time. It's always tough in the beginning, but later you're going to become more creative as well. And it's going to come to you very naturally. So now it takes me 5 minutes to think about a meme. I prepare it and I add to my class. But make sure that if you start doing that, try to keep that a consistent effort so students know what to expect for your classes as well. So now, as I wrap up, I wanted to have some discussions with you. So how are you going to use humor in your classes? And do you have any questions for me? I'll be happy to talk to you about it. So thank you for having me.
So Andy, thank you so much for that. This was the jolt of positivity that we were hoping it would be. That's awesome. I want to say I'm super impressed how content specific your stuff is, because when a lot of people talk about using humor in their class, they just randomly have like a cat video or something like that, and it for me it actually indicates that the stuff we were doing wasn't interesting, so I had to inject something irrelevant to interest you again. And that had always kind of been the wrong message, I think, to send to students. So I really like that you built the content into this. So one of the things that I've tried to do in my classes doing this, because I realize I might not know what's funny for my students. I think I have a pretty good sense of humor, but is I'll often have them do assignments where they create the content, they create the humor for me. So
Mm.
if I were in your class doing the memes at the end for, a couple points of extra credit, I might have students do memes that I would then show the next year's class. And I find it's a really good way to kind of stay current, but also it's a deep application of their learning. So I don't think it's just, offloading the labor. It's a great way, in a fun way, for them to show that the stuff that they learned in your class is good. So that's something that I've done in my classes that I just wanted to share too. But I'm thoroughly excited about the stuff you had shared, and I'll let anyone else kind of contribute and ask questions at this point too.
Thank you, Dom. I love the idea. I think I'm going to incorporate that. I never thought about that before. They could be doing that and like using that as a way to retain class material. Thank you for sharing that.
I call it a relevance assignment.
Great.
So they-
Yeah, like Don said, I think that this fits with what Don often talks about like making a really concise or having students condense what they've learned into something really concise. So I put in the chat, I like having my students meme a thesis statement when they're doing some kind of research project or writing, because it forces them to really focus on like, what is the point of this and how do I transmit that message in a way that's clear and funny? And I always give them some examples of what that can look like. But I think that it makes it fun and interesting and really, I think it really helps to get stronger thesis statements because once they've gone through that process, they're like, oh, this is what I'm looking at. And then with their work and giving them feedback, I can say like, I'll point to things, does this fit? Does this support your meme? Or
Mm.
is this irrelevant? And it can help students really focus on, oh, okay, right, bring it back to that meme. And it feels funny and silly and I don't know, not academic, but I really feel like it supports academic rigor, but in a way that's fun.
Yes, I agree. And that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I completely support this. I think any ways that you can keep your students engaged with the materials and that you know there's going to help them to remember the content, it's very valid. I'm a big fan of humor. Any other comments or questions?
You made me wonder about how this applies in an online setting because in online, it's really hard to read the room. It's really hard to ask something to to use humor in a way that's not corny. Um, the other thing you made me think about is I record my lectures. Ever since COVID, I think a lot of us record our lectures, and and when we post it, students get to see that this joke that you appear to be making off the cuff, spontaneously, is really the same joke you made last semester and the semester before.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say it's definitely a challenge for online classes because you don't know if that joke is going to land well or not. So what I would advise is be extra careful with what you're going to present because you're not going to be able to rely on the reactions as you would in an in-person class. But usually the style of memes that I use, they're harmless. Like there's just like pictures of dogs or Spider-Man or something. So very rarely you would have problems with that. But definitely always triple check the memes to make sure that it's not going to marginalize any groups. It's not going to be offensive for anyone. And honestly, I think the static memes, humor, like memes or cartoons, they're easier for you to control than jokes, for example. Sometimes you might blab and say something that you're not supposed to be saying, but with the static meme, you know exactly what you're presenting and it's not going to change. But yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. That makes a lot of sense.
So, Rick, I'm going to push back and say sometimes we should lean into corny. So, I think sometimes, like, our, it's been my experience that students appreciate the attempt. And if you're the person who's geeking out over your content, even if they don't get it, I think they appreciate that you're trying to bring it to life for them. So I don't get too concerned about that. Now I want to double down and anything. I'm not going to be offensive, right? But I might not be super humorous in a way that my students want to. But even the joke that fails might be more memorable than the kind of straight up presentation of that. So I think there's definitely some value in the attempt.
Yeah,
Can I push
same.
I
back
think
against the
also,
pushback?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Science teacher here. I don't lean into corny so much as I lean into nerdy. Nerdy is awesome. Students are gonna do it anyway. I might as well own it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's not a pushback. We're agreeing. That's awesome.
yeah, I really like to ham it up in my online courses when I'm recording video content, like to like put up memes or funny jokes that are really like kind of, the typical dad jokes. They're not really that funny. But really like spend some time on it and be like, eh? Maybe that wasn't for you, but I enjoyed it, right? And so that like the student, like Don's saying, like they see that you're trying, you're putting out content that's not just dry, informative, that kind of, makes them zone out, but that you're trying to engage them in a way that's playful and fun. And even if the joke is really dumb, that you're trying to like connect with them on a human level.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Sometimes I try to do examples too. I prepare them in advance, like especially when I'm teaching complex topics like molecular biology, some things that are hard for students to visualize because it's not something that you really can see. So sometimes I give examples like, hey, if you're targeting for pop singers, you're going to be able to scan the room to see how many pop singers you have, but you might be missing on country singers. That might be really important too. So there's this method that would give you, hey, I have Taylor Swift and I have Alan Jackson in the room. So what are we going to do about that? So I always try to bring examples of people that I know that my audience will know. And I have lots of Taylor Swift fans. So I use Taylor Swift examples all the time too. But yeah, I agree. Every time you can bring humor in a way that it's going to create an engagement and how do I say, a warm moment with your students, it's always appreciated.
You can call it corny, nerdy, whatever you want. But overall, I think any attempt at decent humor like you've spelled out today is going to make you more approachable. It's going to make the students more likely to say, hey, I need some help, as appearing to be cold and distant. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was very fun.
And all I can say and kind of articulating Barbaria's point slightly differently, right? Is especially if we're kind of making fun of the trouble we had learning the content, but then we successfully did it, then it's an inspiration for growth mindset for our students too. So that humanity, that authenticity, where we can be a little bit self-deprecating and not necessarily that brilliant robot in front of the class. I think that's
Mhm.
definitely what the job requires. And this is one way we can help do it.
And that's what we bring the different, how do I say, I forgot the name of the word. Oh my God. I know that in Portuguese, but not in English. But that is something different that you bring because that is the magic of teaching. The content has always been out there, but we are the ones that are responsible for bringing that in a memorable way, in a way that is going to stick to their minds. So that goes back to that. I mean, if they just want to have a blank page or just a book, they can just go to the library. We bring the experience. That's what makes our classes cool.
Well, Andy, I want to thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think, like we said, we needed that jolt of positivity at the end, and you absolutely provided it. So thank you so much for contributing. So please join me in thanking Andy for this wonderful presentation. I'll remind you that we have a post-event survey we'd like you to complete. We also have a professional development series that will continue next week and then next semester. Next week will be our last event of the semester. We'll have a teaching chat. We'll kind of reflect on the semester. We'll talk about what we've learned, and you'll have opportunity to bring questions or concerns for the group to kind of talk about. We also have a TLC hub that we have on Teams to provide a way to communicate, to let you know about our events and those sorts of things. And as always, reach out if you have questions or need resources. But once again, thank you so much, Andy, for being here, for doing a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for all of you who are watching either in real time right now or asynchronously later. And I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon.